Good afternoon, fair gents and fair maidens. Today I bring you knights. Hi everybody, it's Miss Catherine from the Warrenton branch. Today for Kids Club, we're going to be talking about knights. We'll talk about medieval knights and how a person became a knight back then, how you trained to become a knight, what you fought for, and the different parts of the armor that they wore. So this book is very informational. It's titled The Life of a Medieval Knight, and it's full of a ton of different facts. We won't read the whole book. We'll read parts of the pages. It's definitely going to help you learn a lot about knights. And then we'll talk about some other books that the library has and a fun little craft that you can come by and pick up. So let's go ahead and get started. The Life of a Medieval Knight, and this one's by Ruth Owen. So it starts off by, into battle. Imagine the horrors of a bloody battlefield. Hundreds of soldiers are fighting. Swords clash against swords, kind of like this. Deadly maces and battle axes smash into armor. Horses snort and kick at the soldiers. Dying men are trampled beneath the horses' hooves. This was the world of a medieval knight. Knights were highly trained fighting men. That's right. They trained a lot. They were very, very brave. They weren't just like you or I and go out and fight. They trained so that way they were ready for their battle. They rode into battle on powerful war horses. The horrors of the battlefield did not frighten these brave warriors. The world of the knight. Knights lived in England, France, and other countries in Europe. They fought in wars during the medieval period. The medieval period was a very violent time. Powerful leaders, such as kings and princes, often invaded other countries. They went to war to win land and power. And who do you think they sent when they went to war? That's right, they sent the knights. A knight fought for a king, prince, or lord. In return, he was given rewards such as farmland, or even are you ready for this? Castle. There were warrior knights in Europe for around 500 years, from AD 1000 until the 1500s. Over the centuries, knights became an important group of people. They weren't just soldiers, they were also wealthy members of the upper class, or what is known as the aristocracy. A knight's weapons. On the battlefield, a knight fought against other knights. He also fought against ordinary foot soldiers. He was trained to use many different weapons. At the start of a battle, a knight charged at the enemy on horseback. He carried a long spear-like weapon called a lance. He used the lance to knock enemy knights from their horses. He also used it to stab enemy soldiers. Knights also fought with swords, battle axes, and maces. So see the different weapons there? That is a mace right down there, and this is the battle axe. A knight could attack his opponents with these weapons from his horse. He also used them when fighting on foot. To protect his body, a knight might carry a wooden shield. Take one more look at that. A knight's armor. Knights wore armor over their body, or to protect their bodies. Sorry about that. During battles. Over the centuries, they wore many different designs of armor. The earliest knights wore tunics, leggings, and gloves made of chainmail. So this metal all put together is little round rings, and they link together, and that is called chainmail. They also wore chainmail hoods called coifs. The tops of their heads were protected by metal helmets. Some helmets had a nose piece. These helmets were called nasal helmets. In the 1300s, knights began to wear much larger helmets. These helmets, or helms, covered their whole heads. The great helm had thin slits for seeing through. So eye slits is what it's called. It also had tiny holes to let air into the helmet. Whoops, sorry about that. There we go. Can you see that? Suits of armor. Sometimes knights wore long sleeveless coats over their chainmail. These coats were called surcoats. Down here. Once knights began to wear helmets that covered their faces, they couldn't be recognized. So each knight had his own picture symbol called a coat of arms. And that was a take and make craft that we had a few weeks ago I believe it was 4 teens, and teens could come by and they picked up a shield and learned how to make their own coat of arms for their family. The coat of arms was shown on a knight's surcoat and shield. This way, the knight was able to be recognized. Since they were covering their faces with a helmet, no one knew who was under there. So that coat of arms helped identify which knight was under all of that. By the 1400s, knights wore suits of armor made of plates or pieces of metal. A complete suit of plate armor weighed at least 45 pounds. That is a lot, you guys. That's really heavy. Knights also wore helmets with visors. A visor could be flipped up to help a knight see when he wasn't fighting. So down here in this picture, you can see that there's this part right here would flip up and down so that way he could see. It'd probably be helpful to catch a good breath too. Those poor guys. And this section just speaks about war horses. Like I said, we're not going to read the whole entire book, but I'll touch on this for a second. War horses were specially trained horses just for the knight. And the knights would get their servants to help them train those horses. They would shout and bang on drums and make lots of different noise. So that way, when it was time to go into battle, the horse was not scared of all the sound. And a war horse had to be able to obey its master's every command right then and there. So its master was the knight that it would belong to. And the war horse would need to be able to act in a moment's instance, so that way they could protect their knight. A knight and his horse fought as a team, and they just would go all over in their battles together and stay together as a team. So this is important. Pages and squires. This section will talk about how a boy would become a knight. Only boys from rich families could afford to become knights. To buy armor, weapons, and several war horses would cost about what? How much do you think it would cost? Let's hear some suggestions. Yeah? I don't know about that, but in here it says it would cost about $300,000 in modern money. So in today's money, that's a lot of money. A knight began his training as a child. He became a page or a servant to a knight. He served the knight's meals and cleaned his clothes. And then when he turned 15, he became what is called a squire. Now he was a trainee knight, and he would clean the knight's armor and weapons, and he also cared for the knight's horses. Trainee knights learned to ride and use a lance. They practiced by hitting a wooden target called a quinton. They also learned to sword fight using wooden swords. And now we have becoming a knight. When a knight went off to war, his squire went too. A faithful squire helped his knight put on his armor. He prepared the knight's weapons and war horse for battle. And then it goes on to just talk about a little bit of the things that they would do in battle and how they could increase their skills, which was very good for them in their training to become a knight. And then it talks about how a squire was made into a knight. So a squire was made a knight in a dubbing ceremony. Sorry about that. He knelt before an important person, such as a king, queen, or lord. And then that person tapped the squire on the shoulder with a sword. So I'm sure you've seen that in movies where they'll go, you'll see the person bend down and then the king will go from one shoulder to the next. And that is called knighting someone. And knights had to follow this down here. This is just some of it, but it's called the chivalric code. So they had certain rules that they had to follow too. More about knights in this book talk about how they would joust. Jousting was a good way for them to practice their skills, and it just became like a competition. And any knight that became very good at jousting would become popular, like how we have sports stars. So people who we think are good at football, basketball, baseball, softball, that kind of thing, the same thing with knights back then. They would become really famous for that. They weren't allowed to hit their opponent's body with their lance. They had to hit the opponent's shield. And then sometimes they would hit it so hard that they would bust the lance. And when they did that, they would get extra points. And if they knocked their opponent off of their horse, that was even more points as well. So, a little bit more about this just keeps on going, and it talks about different expeditions that they went on, known as Crusades. It also talked about how they hunt. One thing that I somehow didn't touch on was when knights would work for their kings and queens, they were rewarded very, very generously. So actually we did say that because they said they belong part of the, what? Do you remember that word? It was a fancy one, starts with an A. The aristocracy. They became part of the aristocracy because they earned so much money. So the library has a ton of books about knights. We have informational ones, such as the one that I use to help talk about knights. We have a graphic novel about knights. There are storybooks like Sir Lancelot the Great. We have picture books like this one by Tommy DePaula called The Knight and the Dragon. There's this really great one called King Arthur and His Knights. A lot of people really enjoy the stories about King Arthur and how he became to be. We have books on how to draw knights and dragons and kings and queens. And then we have knights, girl knights. So the Princess Knight, this is a really cute little picture book. We can't forget girls because they'll want to be a knight too. And let's see, so your craft will be, you come by the library and you can pick up these 3 things. This is an elastic band to secure your mask and a sword, and you can go ahead and color it however you want. So you'll see that the sword is blank. See, like mine, I did a few different things on it. I just wanted to jazz it up a bit. And you could even, if you wanted to get really fancy, instead of just using, I used colored pencils on mine. I don't think marker would be such a great idea on here. It might smear a lot. But if you even had like string that you wanted to wrap around it, like some twine, you can make it a nice little thick handle right there. You could decorate all that up. That would be super neat. And so here's also how I did my mask, if you didn't get a good look at it in the beginning of the video. So I just did a few different colors here and kind of just went based off of some pictures that I saw on the computer. So there was this guy, I thought he had the coolest armor that I saw on all the things that I was looking at when I was studying about knights. There's this one too. This guy's super cool looking. Look at that. So anyway, that's all about knights. If you wanted to come by and check out any books about them, feel free to do so. If we don't have them here, you can always request them and we will get them in from wherever you need them to come from. And I hope you enjoyed learning about knights. Bye-bye.